I think more than anything, we hope it's just something new. It's like a new experience. We don't really think about it necessarily as a rhythm game or relative to other rhythm games. I think both like the way it looks and sounds and plays, we hope is like a unique experience.
Finding truly unique games in a sea of repeating genres is tough. Today we're going to be looking at a game that fits that description though. Thumper stands out as a rare gem, a game born from a passionate duo determined to carve out a new gaming experience and a new game genre entirely. The game was developed by Brian Gibson and Mark Fleury, aiming to create what they call a rhythm violence game.
We call Thumper a rhythm violence game.
Mark was previously one of the programmers for Harmonix Games classics, including Rock Band, Guitar Hero, and the Frequency and Amplitude games. Their creation here, unlike typical rhythm games, drags you into an intense, almost anxious state, challenging you to not only react to notes, but to predict the next notes by listening to a mix of haunting sounds that create a blend of chaos and incredibly addicting gameplay. You take control of a metallic beetle coasting down a winding note highway. The mechanics appear to play like a standard rhythm game at first glance, but it's not just about hitting notes. It's about interpreting sounds and responding accordingly with accuracy. The game's audio design, characterized by complex rhythms and terrifying ambience, keeps you stressed out the entire time you're playing it, but continuously coming back for more when you do mess up. The gameplay here demands precise inputs tied to the sounds that you heard previously. It's a game of auditory cues and reactions, a call and response rhythm game, like some hellish nightmare spin-off of a Rhythm Heaven minigame. We'll keep it simple for now, just one track. As far as the notes go, you push A to thump into the normal notes. You steer and hold A to grind along corners. You hold up and A to glide over spikes, and you can push down afterwards to pound into thump notes. Hold down and A to slide through the red lasers, and hit specifically somewhat off-tempo glowing notes to defeat enemies in the boss battle stages. These notes don't correspond to any instrument in the background music, and they can come at you extremely quickly, especially around corners. But it's not a game where you react to the notes, it's a game where you react to the sounds that you previously heard in the mix. Its audio design is extremely complex and refined unlike any other game out there. The game uses additive rhythm and polyrhythm throughout the entire thing. For all my music nerds out there, additive rhythm is where large measures of music are constructed by joining a series of two larger units of unequal length, like multiple bars of 5/8 time mixed with multiple bars of 3/8 time. This is a gross oversimplification, but I put a video in the description explaining how to recreate the effect in Ableton if you want to check that out later. What matters here for Thumper is that you understand that it makes the music in the game make you feel anxious in the weirdest way and makes it almost impossible to count beats or play in time with the overarching music. Point is, there's two time signatures of music happening at once, and it messes with your brain. The game will play an audio cue that you need to listen to in order to hear what action you need to perform next. And as the level continues, more and more noises get added to the mix, mostly in the form of low synths and almost metallic horror sounds, which muddies up your ability to follow what to push and simultaneously increases the difficulty. Different notes will be playing at different time signatures as well, but nothing's ever off beat. While staring into the center of the screen, your body goes into autopilot, hitting all the notes with perfection as you're left wondering how you pulled that off. Make one mistake and you may as well retry, because the mix of mistake noises will pull you right out of that flow state, and it takes a couple seconds to get back into it, causing a streak of missed notes. The game pulls some other audio tricks as well, like with the turns. You'll hear the sound of a turn play almost immediately before the turn comes your way, and you'll need to match the length of your turn with the length that the cue sound was held for. But to know whether to turn left or right, you need to listen for slight variations in the frequency of the turn sound, as well as what direction the sound pans in your speakers or headphones. The difference in directional sound is really subtle, and it gets much more difficult in later stages when the soundscape consists of those nightmarish hell noises that we talked about. The beats that come before obstacles and the obstacles tying seamlessly into the music is just perfection, and it kinda needs to be experienced. Though if you're looking at this footage thinking that's impossible, know that on your way to those later stages, Thumper trained you well. It gradually intensifies the challenge. It starts gently, with World 1 consisting of only thumps, turns, and lasers, but begins introducing those new elements in each world. By World 9, you'll have an intricate mesh of various notes, turns, obstacles, fly turns, enemies, and ground pounds coming at you all ridiculously quickly. Seems pretty binary though, right? In my opinion, the biggest sin a rhythm game can commit is having the scoring work in a way that 100%ing a stage equals the same score every time. Thumper doesn't commit this sin. The score is determined by the amount of gems that you collect, which act as points. You collect them from thumping and pulling off other moves perfectly in time with the rhythm, keeping your multiplier up by never missing a beat, and doing things like holding up to stay in the air longer after a jump and continuing to fly during a turn to complete a fly-through turn. More points. All the stages flow into one another as well, which means it's possible to 100% all 9 worlds in one sitting with a massive multiplier and all perfect timings and all downward thumps, but that's extremely difficult. The chase of trying to achieve something like that, though, is what makes Thumper so addictive. The game also includes a VR mode. It plays the same as the 2D mode, but it allows you to look around in 360 degrees, which is actually really helpful for following the curve of the track. That flow state that we mentioned earlier doubles down here too and makes the game even more overwhelming when your entire body's in the horror world. Now let's talk about the development. Brian had never done any electronic music before. This was his first time doing anything like this. Mark, while working at Harmonix, mostly just did menu development. Neither had ever designed a game. Back in 2009, they set goals for themselves. The first was to make their own engine from scratch. The second was to use that engine to make their own game, with no corporate overlords breathing over their shoulders. They aimed to release the game within a year or two for the 360, but that didn't happen, and the game ended up staying in alpha for over 7 years. Brian began coming up with concept art before they even began working together. You can see in early sketches that the dark mood and vibe was already set. It was always supposed to be a rhythm game. You can tell in the concept images by the dark circles representing notes. Originally, Brian imagined Thumper as a grid-based rhythm game, where you could turn on a grid-based plane. You can see that here. Mark didn't know how to do 3D graphics at the time, only coder art, all wireframe. Eventually though, through a ton of practice, he learned to add textures, skyboxes, and all the other things required to create a video game in your own custom engine. You can see here what they were going for at the beginning. They started with the beat matching mechanic to show that you could move on a grid, which is what was going to differentiate Thumper from other rhythm games. Then, health was added. Your health constantly decreases, and when you hit notes, it increases your health. They stuck with this grid-based concept for a long time, but eventually switched to focusing on speed and turns. The next prototype started bending and deforming the track while you're moving on it. You can start to see the game coming together here, but they abandoned this concept too, since it felt so similar to other rhythm games. Then, Mark moved to Korea in 2011, creating a 14-hour time difference between the two developers. To help mitigate these time zone issues, they updated the engine to make it easier for them to simultaneously work remotely. Going back to the last grid-based prototype, they decided to rework the turns. 90-degree turns were hard to deal with, so they began playing with the angle of the turns and the general look of them. Here, if you look at this path, every square is one beat. Mark figured out how to scale and deform the meshes as well as pitch them up and down. He made it react to lighting and cube map reflections and pitched the track upwards for the entirety of the game, all of which remains in the final build. The millipede was then developed, which took a ton of weeks. With its completion, they now had an evil-looking worm that was supposed to come out of the track, but was then just used as a background element in a boss battle. This was another symptom of the mesh deformation that was added in order to bend the track. The audio was all done by Brian, and it was changed constantly throughout development. The gameplay came first, and then the soundscape was added based on what visuals were created. You can see here how they sequence the gameplay. You can place the beats that you need, the slope of the track, and what gameplay mechanics you're throwing towards the player. Then post-processing effects were added. The engine didn't support it though at first. Being a game all about visual polish, it wasn't a choice. They needed post-processing effects. Here's Thumper without post-processing effects. And here's the final build. They added bloom. Then they desaturate the scene. Then they add cubic distortion to sell the sense of speed. Then they apply the color levels of the scene in order to affect the mood. Then they add a radial blur. Then a vignette to make your peripherals less distracting. And last, they add a noise vignette, which only affects the skybox by darkening the edges of it and applying a noise texture to it. This makes the foreground elements pop more. In 2016, VR development began. It was never meant to be a VR game to begin with, and Brian didn't exactly love VR. He said it made him sick. Eventually, he attended a talk at GDC about the causes of motion sickness and how changes in acceleration is the root cause of that. In Thumper, you go at a constant speed, and the turns are so fast that they feel like teleportations. Sony sent them a PSVR kit and they got to work. In just 3 days, they figured out how to make Thumper work in VR. It started with the field of view being changed from 150 to 100. Then they scaled the path by 2 times, so in VR you're actually going twice as fast, but it feels like you're going the same speed. The beetle originally felt like it was the size of your head, which was nauseating, so they switched it to be about 40 centimeters. The scale of the bosses was adjusted as well. They made the bosses about 4 times bigger so that you need to look up to see them, whereas on a 2D screen the entirety of the boss is visible. The game was on track for becoming a PSVR launch title. About 6 months before the launch of the hardware, on the PS4 the game was running at about 60 FPS, and that's in 2D. In VR, it's rendering 2 eyes at 90 FPS, so optimization needed to be done. Brian got to work over the next 6 months optimizing this VR mode. He goes into depth about the engine changes required in an interview at the Indie Game Summit, which is linked in the description. But long story short, they pulled it off. The game was released at the launch of the PSVR. Mark immediately got to work on Vive and Oculus support as well, and since then, the game's been released on almost all VR platforms, all relevant consoles, as well as the iPhone. Thumper isn't just a game, it's an experience. It's a unique approach to rhythm games, breaking it down from the most simple form and building a fresh experience based on the concept, and the intense challenge it presents makes it a must-have for anybody looking for something fresh and demanding. At just $20, it's a steal for the quality and the effort put in by its creators. This was just another step in my plan of going through all of Harmonix Games' releases from birth to likely death. No, this isn't exactly a Harmonix game. It was developed by Drool, but it has connections with the company. If you haven't seen it yet, check out my video on Amplitude. It should be on the screen now. It's my favorite game of all time. But that's all I got for Thumper though. Thanks for watching, guys. Feel free to subscribe and all that, whatever. Love ya. Peace.